Is focusing on what you're going to do and what you're going to be involved with. Okay. This fall, we'd like to start off our services with a new focus.
First names.
It's a song called Breathe, and Misha will play the melody once. I'll sing it through one time, and then if you would just join in with me, and we'll continue singing it until we start the service. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Thank you, David. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. It's so good to see people in the sanctuary. Welcome to First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church. It's good to have people back in the building after 18 months. My name is Annie Foerster, and I am your celebrant today. Mary?
Good morning and welcome home. Your singing this morning sounded so joyful, even with your masks on. David Bindi suggested we start our services with that song every Sunday to replace the choral introit every week. It's just one of the changes that will make up our new normal. And I understand that next week, our new choir director, Michael Nguyen, will teach us some harmonies to go with the melody that we just sang. I believe the choir will be singing next Sunday as well.
That's right. And we already have 3 new singers in the choir, and I'm one of them. And we would welcome more. Yay! We're rehearsing on Wednesday evenings starting at 7. What else is happening, Mary?
Well, next Sunday after church, we'll meet in the parking lot and head for the Trinity River Trash Bash to help clean the landscape around the river walkways. If you've ever used the trails that are built into the levees throughout Fort Worth, you'll know how trash builds up in one gum wrapper, one coffee cup at a time. If you ever have participated in the Trinity Bash, you know how satisfying it is to be a part of collecting of all of the trash. Please join us if you can. Annie can tell us more about what else is new with the order of service. But first, I have another announcement that I'd like to make.
Okay.
Thomas Earthman has asked us to join the Ware Lecture Book Series at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. We'll be discussing the 2011 lecture by Karen Armstrong. Check your courier and your weekly email for more details about this program. And Annie can tell us some more about our new order of service.
Sure. If you've been watching the services during COVID lockdown, you may have noticed that instead of doing a single sermon, I've been asking a question and responding in 3 parts, and I started doing it because it felt more like television, which was what we were doing, broken up into smaller segments divided by news about the church and about something about members. And since we're going to continue streaming our services live on Facebook and on YouTube, I thought we'd keep that new format. Let me know what you think after we've tried it for a few months. And also, the order of service has been redesigned. Look for an announcement soon on a contest to design a cover for it, possibly many covers, which we can change weekly.
Stay for coffee and refreshments today after the service to catch up on each other's news. We'll open the doors to the library when the service ends, and you'll find it all there. And if you haven't seen it, go check out the new Jagger's Parlor and the new carpet in the hallways.
And when we do open the doors, you'll be able to bring your coffee and food back. There's food back in here. Go out on the patio if you feel more comfortable outside. And I didn't have this in the service, but we have some visitors today, and I would like to introduce them. When you hear your name, would you please just stand briefly and hold your applause to the end? Matt and Brenda. I haven't met them all. Welcome. And wait, hold your applause, hold your applause. I got a whole list. And we have Claire. And there's Claire. And she comes to us from Maryland. I did get a chance to talk to her. Lynette. Where's Lynette? Here's Lynette down front. And Dennis. And Bernard. Where's Bernard? Bernard, he was here last week in a rehearsal. And I want to introduce Adrienne Clay, who joined the church during the shutdown. She's our newest member. Welcome, all of you. And now let us begin our worship with a prelude from Misha Bresnev. He's going to play Chopin's Impromptu No. 1 in A-flat major, opus 29. Misha? I wanted everything to be perfect for your return. Already it's not perfect. You've figured that out. Let me tell you what else is going to happen, and because of the mistakes I made. We have a teleprompter now. I wish I'd known 30 years ago to ask for one. It has been wonderful. But this week I forgot to send them the script. And so only the first 7 or so pages is going to be on the teleprompter, and then we're going to go back to reading our script again. So bear with us. We're learning to do this all over again. And but I think it's still going to be a great service, a fun service. Our call to worship is called Water Poems. It was written by Alice Oswald and John Burroughs. It's a relief to hear rain. It's the sound of billions of drops, all equal, all equally committed to falling like a sudden outburst of democracy. Water, when it hits the ground, instantly becomes a puddle or a rivulet or a flood. To find the universal elements enough, to find the air and the water exhilarating, to be refreshed by a morning walk or an evening saunter, to be thrilled by the stars at night, to be elated over a bird's nest or a wildflower in spring. These are some of the rewards of the simple life. Mary, will you join me for the chalice lighting?
Why a flaming chalice? The question comes.
And as soon as I light it, I will read the answer. It's the cup of life, we answer, a cup of blessings overflowing.
A cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst. A cup of wine for celebration and dedication.
The flame of truth, the fire of purification.
Oil for anointing, healing. Out of chaos, fear, and horror, this was the symbol crafted a generation ago.
So may it be for us in these days of uncertainty and sorrow, and yes, sometimes rage. Please join us in singing our opening hymn. Here we have gathered. The words will be on the screen, but if you'd rather read out of the book, it's number 360 in the hymn. saying our affirmation. It's printed in your order of service and probably go up on screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament. And service is our prayer.
To
To dwell together in peace. To seek knowledge and freedom. To serve others in community. To the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. When I was planning for this service, I sat down one day and I made a list. Yeah. Oh, please sit down. I forget I have to tell people to stand and sit again. I'm learning this job all over, believe me. I sat down and I made a list, and I first put down a title for myself, a question. What does water do? And it was meant to inspire me to create a meaningful water ceremony for today. And my list was surprisingly long, and so I ask you to consider that question. What does water do in your life? And while you're pondering that, I will do a story for all ages. Mary, you can sit down and relax. We've had a chair for one another now. I want to tell you a story about a little drop of water. I heard this story somewhere. Someone must have written it. I couldn't find it in my file, so I rewrote it, but author unknown. Henri was a little drop of water with a long memory. He could remember when he had first landed on Earth as part of a rainstorm. How exciting that was, gathering in the cloud, waiting his cue, the thunder crashing all around, the lightning flashing in the sky. You can imagine. And then, whoosh, he was falling from the sky until, splash, he landed in a puddle that was already full of hundreds of other drops just like him. He had landed on the top of a slight hill, and the puddle was already sliding downward, running on a smooth surface that he later learned was called a street. Whee! He shouted along with some of the other drops. This is fun! And then he was in a large tube, tumbling along until he found himself in a huge container, resting, not moving anymore, just kind of hanging out. And something besides water was being poured into the container, and it was like someone was giving the water a bath. Think about that. Giving the water a bath. He felt so clean. Where are we? He wondered aloud. And an older drop informed him that he was in a reservoir. You're part of the city's water supply now, she said. He had rested there for a few days, getting acquainted with other drops of water as they floated in the reservoir, and then suddenly, whoosh, again, and he found himself drawn into a smaller tube yet, a flexible tube, and then suddenly he was sprinkled out onto a green carpet along with many of his new friends. This is called a lawn, explained one of the older drops. I've been in places like this before. We're part of a garden. Our job is to help it grow. And later, while the sun was still shining, Henri felt himself drawn up into the air. What's happening to us now? He shouted. We're evaporating, he heard the reply. And pretty soon he was high up in the air again, and he landed on another cloud. What fun, he thought. I'm so glad I'm a drop. This happened over and over. Excuse me. He lived in a cloud for a while. Oh dear, just a minute, technical difficulty. Cloud for a while, he fell to earth, he landed someplace different every time, a lawn, a street, a patch of bare dirt, on a person, on an animal. Sometimes he was bathed again, and sometimes he just evaporated without being cleaned up in the clouds, down on the earth, over the landscape, and up into the clouds again. What a life. Until this time, when he was part of a rainstorm, he fell into the biggest puddle he had ever experienced. He saw a few friends and a lot of new strangers, new drops of water he'd never met before. He tasted something different. Salt, someone shouted when he asked. Sometimes he floated. Sometimes the wind blew around him, and sometimes he was lifted up in the air and he fell back into the giant puddle. Always he was moving somewhere, but always he was in the giant puddle. This is a life, he thought. Until one day he heard a different kind of noise. He saw the drops in front of him were rising into the air and crashing down on the land, rising high up and crashing down with great force. He was getting closer and closer to the land, closer and closer to the rising up and the crashing down. And then he was pushed from below and he rose up into the air. "Help!" he cried. "We're going to crash." "Don't worry," said a drop of water. "You're part of the ocean. You're part of something larger than yourself. Here we go." And with that, they crashed into the sand and then they flowed back into the ocean. "That was fun," said Henri. "Let's do it again." "Oh, we will," said his new friend. "You're part of creating this beach. You're part of an ocean wave. Hold my hand. Here we go again. Here we go again. We're part of something larger than ourselves. We're part of everybody in this room." Children are welcome to stay for the rest of the service. We'll be pouring water in a few minutes as part of your return home. But if they'd rather go to the nursery, there are people you know there standing by for child care. So the choice is up to you. Stay. Do stay if you want, but free to go. Okay, I think that is the end of the script as it's typed, and now I'm going to be reading. I think, Mary, I've got this first part, so you can sit again. So did you have a minute to think about what water does, what it means to you? I didn't give you much time for contemplation, and maybe you'll take time later after you're home, after the thrill of seeing one another, greeting friends has worn off a little. It really is good to see you sitting in those chairs. I want to just stand here and look at you, rest my eyes on you after seeing 18 months of empty chairs, piles of furniture from the parlor, tangles of electric cords. We lived like gypsies while you were gone. But I know you want to share this moment as we do every year, except for last year, in a communion of water, sharing what water means to all of us. But first, let me set the stage for the water communion. Here's my list, as I wrote it, as I told you, higgledy-piggledy in no particular order, one thought jumping into another. The uses of water. It hydrates. We need to drink it. It cleanses and heals. We need to shower occasionally. It helps things grow. It provides power. It creates clouds. It provides habitats. It is used to make my morning tea or your morning coffee. It provides beauty. I was thinking of waterfalls and rivers. It carries journeyers, explorers, visitors. It is a symbol of purity in many rituals. And you can probably add many more things to my list as you create your own list. But how about a few tidbits of scientific fact? Up to 60% of the human adult body is water. According to H.H. Mitchell, Journal of Biological Chemistry, the brain and the heart are composed of 73% water, and the lungs are about 83% water. Why aren't we drowning? And the skin contains 64% water, except in this heated weather when it gets really dry. And muscles and kidneys contain 79% water, and even our bones are watery, 31%. Water is essential to us. It is in us, and yet we must continually ingest it. We bathe in it. It nourishes our lawns and our gardens. It runs our electric plants. Lands were settled all over the world in places where a river ran or an ocean poured or a wellspring was detected. And although we are land animals, we have learned to swim in it, build structures that will float us up on the top of it, other structures that will allow us to explore beneath it, inside of it. And often it is simply beautiful, making it essential to our souls. Oh, water gives us such pleasure, doesn't it? I bet that there is more poetry written about or including some image of water than anything else in the world, with the possible exception of love. Think Mark Twain. Samuel Clemens took his nom de plume from a sailor's cry as he measured the harbor depth so that the ship's captain could steer without hitting a reef or a shallow spot. Twain means two, and the word mean 2 fathoms of safe water underneath the ship. Many of Twain's writings took place on or near a river. Water is a big influence on our history as the settlers moved westward. You know, my mother and father and my daughter all moved to Hawaii at some time during their lives because they were enamored of the water that surrounded them there. I myself am an earth person, preferring to keep my feet dry, but I watched them all change physically as their spirits were fed at the shore. They could stand for hours just watching the waves frolic with the sand. Yes, water feeds our spirit as well as our bodies. If land embraces our dreams, water allows our imaginations free access to new dreams, to possibilities, to adventures. Each year, when we are here, you bring water from your trips away from home as we return to our church home. And we combine these waters for spiritual blessings later in the year. Possibly this year you weren't able to travel away from home, but you brought symbolic water from your kitchen tap. Or you will utilize the virtual water we have set out for you. Those little cups are filled with water, and when they're emptied, you can pour water from the pitcher to add to the communion. Our water communion will take a slightly different format this year to accommodate these realities. But first, I have asked Mary to share a reading with us that gives you a kind of different view of water you might not have considered.
Our reading is a poem by Langston Hughes, "The Negro Speaks of Rivers." Langston Hughes wrote this poem when he was 17, crossing the Mississippi, on his way to visit his father in Mexico. It was published the following year, beginning his literary career. As Annie said, it gives us another way to look at water, for Hughes was a man of color, looking at Black history as opposed to European white history. And now, I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers.
I know that this poem has been set to music for choral presentation, and I'm hoping maybe our choir will one day sing it. But for now, Mary and I are going to go down to the water table and we'll tell you what's going to happen next. Thank you, Misha. Earlier, we lit the chalice, giving us the element of fire. Here, we have a fountain, which represents water, and these stones, river stones in it, represent the earth. So Mary is standing next to a piece of art that will, after this morning's service, stand in the garden patio. It was donated to the church by David Bindi. Thank you, David. Mary, yes. Mary will start its arms in motion, and that motion will represent the element of air. And now we are ready to reflect on water. Let's get this thing started, though, first. Isn't that gorgeous? It's different every time. Each year as we gather in the fall, it has been our custom to offer water as a symbol of our connection one to the other. This morning you will have 4 opportunities to share whatever water you brought, if you did bring some, or pour from the communal pitcher of virtual worldwide water. You can share briefly not only where your water comes from, but share what it means to you, what it symbolizes in your own lives. So let me tell you how this will work. First, we will have a chance to share water that reminds us that while some have abundance, others struggle with scarcity. And then we will share water that symbolizes travel and movement and change. And then third, we will share water that reminds us of life's storms, our concerns, our worries, our frustrations and losses. And finally, we'll share water that reminds us of the well springs of our lives, which nourish our bodies and our souls. So be spontaneous when and if you want to share. You need not speak. You may just come up and pour water into the bowl. But if you want to speak, come to the microphone. You may lower your mask to talk because it will be easier for people to understand you. Just don't touch the microphone. And no droplets will be exchanged from the previous speaker because they do not float back through the microphone. Okay, part 1 is about drought. And so you see this container is empty. It has no water in it. Drought. It reminds us of all who lack access to safe and affordable water. So I dedicate this first water. Oh dear, if I can get the cork out. I knew I should have rehearsed this. Okay. This is so embarrassing. All right, symbolically. Okay, Brittany's going to do it. Brittany's young and strong. Just don't break and cut yourself. It just, oh, you have to unsnap it. Thank you. Now I remember. Okay. I told you this wasn't going to be perfect. I dedicate this first water from the water communion of 2 years ago. And we will start our collection with it. And it symbolizes our solidarity with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee and all those around the world who are calling for the human right to have access to fresh water. And I also dedicate this water to all the farmers out west who have lost crops and livestock this summer because of the drought there, one of the worst they've ever had. And I will have more to say about that later. So if you would like to share your water representing an awareness of scarcity in our community or our lives, please come forward now and pour a little of your water or the virtual water into the bowl. And as I say, if you'd like, say a word or two about the significance of the water into the microphone. And Misha is going to play the hymn In Time of Silver Rain as you come forward.
That water is about being told that because of all of the pipes bursting, our water might not be clean, and that we would have to boil our water, and having no electricity, and trying to figure out how we were going to do that. And finally, lighting a fire in the fire pit in the backyard and boiling water that way for 2 days.
I did not plan this. I have an ice pack on my wrist this morning, and I am very glad and grateful that when I had a minor injury caused by a leisure activity, I lived in a first world country where not only the natural miracle of water and ice, but the human-made advantage of refrigeration and clean water means I have access to health and comfort. Everything we do to keep ourselves safe during the pandemic depends on that access to clean water, hand sanitizer, washing your hands, washing your reusable masks. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the people who make that effort to sort of partner with water in promoting life, and hope that like the waters, it spreads.
Thank you, Virginia.
I was interested in making my water represent the water that fell as rain the 4 or 5 times this summer on our wildflower field. And I was here when the rain fell and the wildflowers and the earth just soaked in that glorious, rejuvenating rain. And it's really beautiful here with the gorgeous wildflowers and the rain coming down. It's so different from those hot 110-degree days. Of course, it never got to be 110, but it felt like that.
Thanks, Joe.
When everything froze over this past March, our pipes broke. But I was lucky enough to be working in a facility that offered us water because we didn't have access to water anymore. We went almost a week without water, but every day that I went to work, I would exchange buckets and be able to bring home fresh water and be able to cook and clean and bathe my children. And it's amazing how much a community can come together like that.
Thank you, Brittany.
Like the rest of you, I'm so thankful for the clean water we have. We're very blessed. My kind husband noticed that we had little flecks of black in our water in Arlington, and he bought a little filter for our refrigerator, so now we have water that's clear again.
As you know, in Fort Worth we have watering days, and my watering days are Thursdays and Sunday. And that has given me an enormous appreciation for how often this summer it has rained on Thursdays and Sundays.
Thank you, Misha. Go ahead, Mary, and I'll fill up the cups again.
So the next part of our water ceremony is about transformations. At this time, I invite you to share water, real or virtual, that reminds you of the changes and transformations in your lives, your journeys, whether spiritual or physical. If you weren't able to travel this year, where would you have wanted to go? The pandemic has changed all our lives. If you would like to share what changes have occurred with you, bring your water forth now, silently or with a brief description or a prayer.
soon as I get out of your way. And Misha is going to play I've Got Peace Like a River.
This water represents the water at Virginia Beach when we got to have our first family reunion in over 10 years, and my kids got to meet all my cousins and stay up and play with them and get those bonds. It was amazing.
Thank you. I keep forgetting to ask you, would you please say your name? This was Jules.
My name is Jackie. My water is for the change in my family as we grew together finally as a family during the pandemic.
My water symbolizes my trip to Columbus, Ohio, the city where I was born and raised. And it especially symbolizes the time I spent with my sisters and my reunion with my classmates and friends who knew me when I was a teenager.
Thank you, Mary.
So this year we went to New Mexico for the summer, and we traveled all around.
This water is from the well at Chaco Canyon at the campsite, which is probably the main event of our trip. And
it has an inn in it, which means it must have been for me to drink while we were hiking.
Yes, so Chaco Canyon has been for hundreds of years a meeting place for Native Americans, the Anasazi, who used to go there annually to trade and to have ceremonies. And so I brought some ceremony sticks from Chaco Canyon for the church to use in their pagan services.
Thank you.
You were able to travel once in the summer out of the North Texas. I'm Dan Levine. My wife and I were able to travel up to the Boston area to see family and a longtime friend. And this was virtual water from the pond and back of my sister and brother-in-law's house.
Paul Shatman. For the last 18 months, my wife and I pretty much didn't go anywhere, do anything, or have any fun. But this water represents voyages. Over this period, our family has gained and lost, and we have seen bottoms that I used to powder and diaper send children of their own, who I also powdered and diapered, off to college and university. Voyages go on. I don't know where they're going, they have as much fun as we have had. And that goes for all of you.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm Julia Sexton, this is Dan. The transformation this water represents is the passing of my father, and the water is symbolic of the Middle Saluda River in South Carolina, Greenville County, South Carolina, near where he lived.
I'm Brian. I think it's a wonderful coincidence that the topic is transformation. I brought this water from my new home that I moved into about a year and a half ago, just before the pandemic. And at that time, I was recently divorced still. My kids were off to college and places, and it was a wonderful surprise that they came back because of the pandemic. And it was also a time that I spent reconnecting with my ex-wife, and we eventually got back together and were married again earlier this year. So for me, it's a big transformation, and this place that I moved into it's like a real home again for me, with my whole family there and time that we spent together, and I'm very, very thankful for that.
Thanks, Brian.
My name is Joy. My water is for the 2 new births we've had this last year in our family. Both grandsons at that.
All right.
And one of them probably wouldn't have been here. My daughter was told she couldn't have children. And 3 years later, she had a little boy.
Hi, I'm Joe Burnham. This water represents Lake Tawakoni, where Roy Brake and I went to the Brake family reunion. I'm grateful for being adopted by Roy's family because my family is in Canada, and I haven't been able to go see them for 2 years. I'm also grateful for my Unitarian Universalist family here at First Jefferson, and I love all of you guys, and I'm really excited getting to know our new people.
Thanks, Joe.
Hi, I'm Paige Vinson, and this water represents the Brazos River, where I grew up with my father and my family. Family is very important to me, just like you all are my adopted family. After I came out many years ago and lost my family for a while, I reconnected, of course, with my father before he died. I just inherited the Brazos River property from my father, and so I plan on having wonderful, wonderful memories with him, and have been out there quite often during COVID to reflect and think about life, liberty, family, friends, good friends, and what it means to be part of what my dad called the good. And I think that the good is part of this water, the Brazos River. It just all seems very connected to me, so I thought I would share that with you all as my family. Thank you.
Thanks, Paige. Take one off the plate. There you go.
I'm Bernard Kern. We traveled in the Holy Land a couple of years ago, and the water that I poured here symbolizes for me a vial of water that I have at home, which comes from the River Jordan. And I guess I think of my own pilgrimage in the life of faith. I can't think of water without thinking about the sacramental value we attach in the sacrament of baptism, the beginning of the life of faith.
Thank you, Bernard.
Morning. The water here represents change and loss. I know a lot of people here have dealt with loss. I'm no different. In the past 2 months, losing 2 of my aunts, one of them my favorite aunt, one of my sworn nephews who was 4 to neuroblastoma. And I don't know if y'all remember Denise, but we lost her due to cancer, which is already hard for me since I lost my mom 8 years ago to cancer. But in this side of history, we just gotta adapt to the change, adapt to the world around us, adapt to the losses. That's all we can do. As Bruce Lee would say, be water, my friend.
Thank you, Renee. Before Mary announces the offertory, I want to remind you that this bowl, this beautiful blue water bowl, was left to us by Irene Foerster, who was president of the congregation when I came here 3 years ago, but has since moved to Houston and left this behind to remember her by. Mary, while you're talking, I will fill up some more cups.
Our offertory. Sharing is not an unfamiliar concept in the life of this congregation. We share with one another the work of the church, the lives of the people in it, and how we affect the world outside our doors. Your sharing of pledges has given us the power to continue our work even as our doors were closed. This morning we invite you to share generously as we take the morning offering. As we have done in the past, we give half of our Sunday morning free will offering that doesn't reflect pledges to a designated group. For the next 3 months, we are sharing the plate with Eastside Community Assistance, formerly known as Eastside Ministries. Will the ushers please come forward and take the morning offering?
Mary? Mary? Rest your feet. it is time to share water, symbolizing the storms in our lives, the concerns and sorrows, confusions and frustrations. Allow this vessel to be one of receiving and healing as it absorbs your personal storms. And again, you're welcome to say a word or two about the significance of your water, or simply to pour water in without saying anything at all. Isha?
Hi, I'm Carl. This water is for this building, which seems to be sending us a message about water. And so I just want to remind everybody that it's a beautiful place and it needs a lot of love. We had pipes burst in the freeze. We had trouble with our water heater recently. Before that, the ice maker flooded. So one of our contractors said, something about you guys and water. And I think she's right. And so let's listen to the building and take care of it. It's a beautiful place.
Thanks, Carl. This is the time when every Sunday when we celebrate a communion of names and milestones. And I do want to remind you that our meditation table over in the corner on your right is for your use at any time during the service. You may light a candle over there for a silent joy or concern, for a gratitude or a prayer. It's your table, use it as you will. And you will notice probably that several pieces have been added to it since we were together. Representatives of world religions and philosophies, a Shiva dancing on and stomping upon ignorance, a Buddha contemplating the suffering of the world, and a Darwin fish reminding us of our humble beginnings. We light the candles in our fountain this morning for the stories told and unspoken that live in this community, for which we are grateful and responsible, concerned and caring. This book is out in the vestibule for you to share these stories before the service so that they can be read. On August 24th, 2021, we lost a former church member, Denise Alexander, to cancer. Her soulmate, Donna Tyre, could use some healing energy and prayers. Joy filled this out. Joy is part of the caring and sharing team and has been calling people. And on a happier note, she wrote, this week we had 3 birthdays. Brittany Garcia turned 27 on the 7th, Matthew turned 4 on the 10th, and today Naomi turns 8. Yay, Naomi! Stand up and take a bow, 8-year-old. We honor you. And this one is from me. Listening to NPR yesterday and the personal stories of 9/11, I cried most of the day. They were so beautiful and so well done. And I really appreciated that they mentioned the local Muslims who were made into instant enemies because of that terrible tragedy, though they had nothing to do with it. And they have, for the last 20 years, had to suffer through that. And Carl told me, thanks to Julie Thibodeau, his wife, for coming today. She immediately picked up a trash bag when she got here and began to pick up trash in the yard. So thank you, Julie, a volunteer of great proportion. Thank you. Let us take a moment to close our eyes, to consider the relevance and the importance of our being together once again, for the the stories that are told in this community, for the stories that live here untold, because they too are part of our lives. Let us just take a moment of silence and meditation. We will not have a musical interlude afterward because we've kept Misha playing throughout this ceremony, and we still have more to do. So let us be silent together. May your story live in the love that makes this community be one. For our fourth part, we're going to talk about sustenance. And take this moment, if you wish, to share the names of people who have sustained you through the pandemic. They might include friends and family, but also the people who delivered the food you ordered when you were reluctant to go out yourself, or the people you don't even know who sustained us all by healing the sick, going to work in essential industries, keeping the peace, helping us stay connected. Share your thoughts as if you felt sustained by someone or helped to sustain another during COVID. And I'm going to ask this time that we just all pause and at the same time start calling out names of people who sustained us. And I will begin with all of you who stayed loyal for the last 18 months to this beautiful community. Please. Names. And if you would like to come forward and share some water at this time, please do so. I think, Mary, you have something to add to this part here.
As we conclude our water communion, we invite you to bring water that reminds you of the wellspring of your life, the water that sustains you when you are feeling empty, the joys that give you hope and buoy you up.
I'm echoing their mother's comment about Addison and Jillian. They have definitely sustained me through this.
I'm Connie Nolan, and my water represents the Downworthington Gardens pond, where I can go bird watch and look at the ducks and the geese and the herons and the cranes and the others that pass through on their migrations.
Outside of the pandemic, it's rough living with chronic depression and mental illness in general. But because of the pandemic, not being able to go out, not being able to have social interactions, it's been even harder on me. And I don't know how many times I've come close to even considering the worst case scenario. And if it weren't for my husband, my children, my mom, my sister, who have always been there to support me in those dark times, I probably wouldn't even be standing before you today.
Thank you, Brittany.
That one's for Guy, Julie Havilone, Patrick Gutierrez, and for David Winkowski, who did the coffee hour every week online for us.
And I will add to that, thank you all the lead singers from the choir who sang the hymns online when I had started out doing them and you realized how bad that was. and to Mary Kerwin and Lori McKitka and others who came in to run the teleprompter. And there were so many people working behind the scenes, and they sustained the whole church. Yes, I saw someone else getting up.
In all of the difficulties and challenges, I was given the opportunity to sit in my window and be sustained by all of the wildlife I was suddenly able to see and notice.
Okay, thank you, all of you who shared. I know we're going to run over today, but you don't mind because it's about you. And in the river, water continually flows on, yet the river is ever there. Our lives flow on in endless song, yet life and joy shall never end. Please join us in singing this traditional Quaker hymn, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. It's 108 if you're using a hymnal. Thank you, Mary. You can sit down. If you'll just be seated, we have maybe 5 or 10 more minutes here as we get ready to end the service. We aren't done yet. There's still much to talk about, to think about. You know, I remember a long time ago studying that beautiful Samuel Taylor Coleridge poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I hope some of you studied that in school. And you know, I memorized much of it because I read it over and over again. I was so fascinated by it. And these are the lines that stand out when I think about it. Water, water, everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water, everywhere, and not a drop to drink. That was the horror of a mariner trapped in the ocean, alone, punished for killing an albatross. Surrounded by water, he thirsted. Well, today there is a similar around the world. Water, fresh water, is becoming scarce. Everyone is in danger of thirsting. This statistic given to us by Merrill Cullinan of Action Against Hunger is just the beginning of the story. He wrote, "The number of active humanitarian crises read wars, has doubled in the past 10 years. Nearly 2 billion people now live in fragile and conflict-affected areas where people are displaced and water-related infrastructure is often destroyed or neglected. This situation has resulted in nearly 80 million people lacking clean water, hygiene, and sanitation services. Without access to these vital services, the risk of waterborne diseases increases, and people's health and nutrition suffer. A new UNICEF report states that, quote, in protracted conflicts, children younger than 15 are, on average, nearly 3 times more likely to die from diarrheal disease linked to unsafe water and sanitation than from violence directly linked to conflict and war. But war isn't the only culprit affecting people's access to clean water. Climate change, waste, and greed have caused global shortages affecting not just thousands, but billions of people worldwide. This from the same article. 844 million people lack basic access to a clean water source, and 2.3 billion people cannot access safe sanitation. Unsafe water causes the spread of deadly diseases such as cholera and diarrhea, which are major drivers from undernutrition in children. Each day, an estimated 1,000 children die of preventable waterborne diseases. What's more, climate change makes water availability less predictable in many parts of the world as drought becomes more common, and elsewhere flooding destroys and contaminates water sources. This is not a crisis, friends, of miles away on the other side of the world. Shannon Snyder wrote this for the Water Project, an organization dedicated to providing water to everyone. She wrote, water scarcity is a global concern, and that means there's even a problem in your own backyard. While it may be difficult to put yourself in the shoes of an African child struggling to find fresh water, it is important to understand that water scarcity affects everyone, even here in the United States. It seems impossible that a powerful river like the Colorado River is beginning to run dry in places. It seems far-fetched that a huge body of water like Lake Mead in Arizona might become obsolete. But these and other dramatic changes are facing the United States. Researchers claim that Lake Mead, which currently supplies water to 22 million people, may be dry by the end of this year. This year. Because of current water scarcity concerns, hundreds of homeowners who are today illegally drawing water from the Colorado River may soon be forced to cease pumping. Climate warming is thought to be decreasing water containment in the Colorado Basin, such as Lake Powell. Some of the Colorado River's lower courses near Baja California is now actually running dry already. It's easy to think this doesn't affect us, but it does. It could easily. We are all vulnerable to this problem, and we all need to be aware of our own personal influence on it. Does your home still use wasteful flush toilets? Are your water pipes insulated to keep water temperatures at a usable level? Are your shower heads overly generous as they rinse the soap from your bodies? Are you lawn proud? Do you water only when it is your turn and for the recommended length of time? Last February, you may remember the pipes in Jagger's parlor burst, sending gallons of water through the walls, causing damage and mold. But when we see the new refurbished parlor and adjoining nursery, we might tend to forget the water wasted before the break was discovered. Yes, we were able to make lemonade out of our lemons, and we insulated our water pipes so that further winter climate change won't make this a recurring situation. Each of us can do something to help ease the water crises, something in our own homes. New dual flush toilets are more expensive, but worth it in the long run. If you can afford them, get them now. We can report leaks in city water pipes as soon as we see them. My neighborhood is old, and we have way too many breaks under the streets. We need to hold our cities and politicians to fixing them permanently. Look up water shortages online and support those organizations who are already working on the problem, and ask them what you can do in your area. We are here, back together again. We are no longer alone. We are few, but together we can do much. Let us pledge to support one another. Let us add to our list of what water does, aware that we, each and together, are responsible for maintaining the joys and healing and sustenance it brings into our lives. Let us honor this planet, this blue boat we all ride through the stars, our home. The only home we are ever likely to have will be nothing without water. Please join me in singing our closing hymn, number 1064, in the Teal hymnal, Blue Boat Home. You may remember that when we were here before, we held hands at this time. Let's not do that today. Let's not do it for a while until we're really safe. But stand close to one another and be aware of one another's presence. We lit our chalice this morning for one another, for our shared journey, for our cup of blessings overflowing with our needs and our offerings. And we extinguish it here as we take it with us in our hearts until we meet again. I'm going to leave the candles of caring and sharing burning as a reminder of our coming together again. May the firmness of the earth be yours. May the flow of the water be yours. May the freedom of the air be yours. May the fierceness of the fire be yours. May all of the gifts of this life, the below and the above, be with you now and remain with you always. So may it be in all our lives. Please join me in the library for refreshments and conversations. Feel free to bring the food back into the sanctuary or take it out on the patio as you mingle and greet one another, and be sure you welcome our visitors today. Thank you.